the Department of Defense, which knows this issue in a way that the Department of State does not, had made the judgment that the camp was largely disarmed with no heavy equipment at that time. Now, my mandate is not to go back and review the record of those years. The mandate of my office is to move forward, and it's my hope that the remaining convoys can move ahead.
Let me ask you, does your hesitation to answer the question in a direct fashion have anything to do with the fact that if we were now to go on record as the official government position is that Camp Ashraf was disarmed, that those people who went in and took the lives of over 30 residents of Camp Ashraf would then be guilty of a war crime?
No, not at all. Not at all. My caution is a function of the fact that there is active litigation going on, which I find, which means I have to be more careful than even usual.
I'm sure they're glad there wasn't any active litigation going on after Pearl Harbor. We could have never retaliated against the Japanese for Pearl Harbor, I guess. Well, let me ask you, I'll go back to reserve the balance of my time to ask questions, and Your Honor, I'm sure you have a few things you'd like to bring up. And now you're dealing with the judge now.
And you're going to have to keep your answers a whole lot simpler than you have with Mr. Chairman. Has the State Department ever asked to search Camp Ashraf, to your knowledge?
The State Department?
The State Department.
Not during the time in which I've been responsible for this position, and I have good direct knowledge of what's happened since I took my current job in last November.
Is there anything preventing the State Department from searching Camp Ashraf other than Iraqi government saying you can or you can't?
Well, as a practical matter, it's not Camp Ashraf is not, it's not our sovereign territory.
I understand
it's Iraqi
that.
sovereign territory.
I understand all that.
Our efforts, now on the ground, I can tell you that we have substantial efforts going on to have our people go to Camp Huria, Camp Liberty. They were there 2 days ago. They're there on a pretty frequent basis. We've had people going up to Camp Ashraf before to meet with people. Our emphasis, you know, we put our resources to work on the current issues of welfare, security of the people at Camp Huria, support of the UNHCR for its refugee processing, support of the convoys. In my judgment, that is where our efforts should be, because to get these people out of Iraq, we have to get them from Ashraf to Huria and then from Huria out. That's where our emphasis has been. Our resources are substantial, but they're not unlimited. And frankly, everything I know convinces me that our resources are rightly devoted to the here and now, and not to, I don't want to see them or our efforts diverted.
Are you aware that in April 2009, the Iraqi government searched Camp Ashraf with dogs and then signed a document saying that there were no weapons there, no ammunition there? Are you aware of that?
I've heard that.
There's also a video of the search. Have you seen the video of that search where they found no weapons?
I haven't seen that video.
I don't think it's on YouTube yet, but are you aware of any third-party countries that have expressed any willingness to take a resident from Camp Liberty? They said they'll take them.
Yes.
And those countries
on March 23rd, the UNHCR hosted a conference in Geneva, attended by the United States, the Iraqi government, number of European and non-European governments. Many governments expressed a willingness to consider taking people. there were no pledges or promises or numbers, but there were a number of governments that said yes, they were willing to work with the UN and receive referrals from the UNHCR. The United States was one of those governments, but we were not the only government. That is a start. It's not sufficient in itself, but it's a good start from which to build, and it is precisely there, Judge, that we have to throw our efforts.
It seems to me the listing of the MEK as a foreign terrorist organization is one factor that makes countries hesitant to take these residents, even though some of the European countries have delisted the MEK. I think that if there was delisting, that you would have much more cooperation with third-party countries in taking these individuals back. You mentioned in your testimony, my last comment, you mentioned in your testimony about the living conditions. As we talked about last time, Rudy Giuliani, for example, mentioned that Camp Liberty was a concentration camp in conditions. And we're moving this process further down the road. Always takes longer than anyone expects to get the residents from Camp Ashraf, Camp Liberty, and then to somewhere else in the world. What kind of deadline is the Iraqi government given the whole process, and how will that affect the living conditions of the people in Camp Liberty?
The Iraqi government has suggested that as long as the process is moving forward, that is, convoys moving from Ashraf to Camp Huria, and then the UNHCR process moving people and hopefully out of Camp Huria, and I should add that a few have left. As long as that process is going forward, there has been much less talk of a deadline. This is a good thing. In the meantime, there are legitimate issues of living conditions that need to be addressed. Water, sewer, sewage, power, that sort of thing. Facilities for the disabled. And there does need to be progress made, because as long as the residents are there, for however long they're there, living conditions need to be good, and they need to be stable.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like unanimous consent to introduce into the record two documents, testimony by Colonel Wesley Martin before the House of Commons in Canada on May 15, 2012, a second document by him regarding some issues of the MEK and some questions and facts regarding that issue. I'd like unanimous consent to put this in a record.
Without objection.
I yield back.
Joined by Brad Sherman, a colleague from California. Mr. Sherman, you may take as much time as you so find appropriate.
First, I want to thank the chairman for letting me participate. I'm not a member of the subcommittee. It may have already been introduced in the record, but if not, I'd like unanimous consent to introduce in this record a letter to Secretary Clinton signed by David Phillips, the Brigadier General, Wesley Martin, the retired colonel, and Leo Mikulski, the lieutenant colonel, retired, all in reference to this matter and dated April 19th.
Without objection, so ordered. And let me remind my colleague that this hearing will be over after the testimony and the questions and answers. We'll have a second round. Mr. Carnahan should have a chance to, hopefully, to ask his questions after these questions, and immediately after this hearing is adjourned, General David Phillips, who you just quoted in the letter, will be briefing us in this spot for those who would be interested. And you may proceed.
Hearing followed by a briefing. Who says Congress isn't fun? We had on May 8th the U.S. Court of Appeals dealing with the writ of mandamus on the MEK. First of all, Ambassador, are you aware of any other circumstance where a district court has issued a writ of mandamus on an issue of foreign policy directed at the State Department? Is this as extraordinary as an action as the courts have ever taken on a foreign policy matter?
My experience in this and those sort of legal proceedings is limited. I do gather that it is somewhat unusual.
Somewhere between highly unusual and utterly unprecedented would be the way I would characterize it. Now, during that proceeding, the lawyer for the State Department said the MEK did not permit an inspection. They did not permit a door-to-door inspection looking for caches of weapons or to actually disarm door-to-door. Since then, a letter has been signed by the soldiers actually involved in that searching effort, the Brigadier General, the Colonel, and the Lieutenant Colonel, all basically saying that the State Department lawyer lied to the court. Has the State Department taken action to make sure that the court has been advised that this lawyer that had no direct knowledge of the of what actually happened on the ground at Camp Ashraf said some statements to the court that might mislead the court as to the actual events?
Sir, this is a matter under active litigation, and so I have to be very careful. I said earlier, in response to a similar question, that it is my understanding that the Department of Justice has sent a letter to the court answering some of the questions. I believe that that letter has been filed and is available, but because it is active litigation, I have to restrain myself and not go any further.
Do you disagree with the three officers involved that, in fact, a proper door-to-door search for weapons was, in fact, conducted at Camp Ashraf?
Here, too, I believe that the letter from the Department of Justice addresses these issues, and because, sir, I'm in an awkward position. This is active litigation. It's taking place in federal court, and so my mandate is to try to get people safely out of Camp Ashraf, over to Camp Huria, and out of Iraq. That's my job, and I hope that the Department of Justice letter can clear all that up.
So your ultimate goal is to get them out of Iraq. Is that relocation facilitated by the designation of the MEK as a foreign terrorist organization? Or is it impeded by that designation?
The Secretary of State's decision on the designation will be made on the basis of the facts and the law, not on even my own considerations.
Yeah, and I didn't ask you what she's going to do or what she should do. I just asked whether the current situation impedes you and your stated goal. I mean, there may be other reasons why that designation is maintained, but as long as it's maintained, does it impede you in achieving your goal?
I have to work with the designation as long as it exists.
We know that.
And I will do my best to work with what I've got. That decision will be made apart from my office.